I'll start at the beginning. I know your background in sports maybe not as extensive as a lot of players that I covered, but that was how I met you. So if you don't mind, what got you hooked on to basketball, maybe some other sports? What led you to give it a go, if you remember that first moment of memory?
Yeah, honestly, I remember the first time I went to the basketball court. I was at Centennial Middle School, and I just wanted to get involved in any after-school program that I could possibly get involved in. And so I went in there, and the coach was like, do a layup. And I was like, what's a layup? And so ever since then, I just was playing basketball, volleyball. I tried softball, just to be out of the house and involved in something. And then I went over to Washington Middle School, and I was playing there on that team. We were getting blown out every single game, but it was just about the team and the family aspect to being a part of sports. And then when I got to Como Park High School, it was a bit more intense, so I stopped playing volleyball and I just stuck with basketball. I played AAU with Coach Pat and Coach Latoya. She was my coach at Washington Middle School, and then I went over to Como Park, and she was also going over to Como Park.
That's how I met her. And were you on the Charity Warriors then?
Yes.
Okay, when you mentioned Pat, it's like, I think I know who. It's all coming together. And you touched on this a bit, so what did you enjoy most about the sport? What was it about basketball in particular that kept you going?
It was really the family aspect, just having your teammates and your coaches and that bond, and just being able to have a community of people to rely on and be around consistently.
And what did you enjoy most about it as you made your way through? Because you went from a middle school team that, like you said, was on the wrong end of a lot of blowouts to a Como team that was, rebuilding wouldn't be right, because I think you came in, around the time Andrea was a big name, and then you stayed with it as Ronnie and KK, and that 2022 class was just coming in. But how would you say you evolved over time as you kept at it with the sport?
I would say that I evolved really being able to cheer people on, essentially, and being a support system, and being okay with being a team player as opposed to a star player. And I think that that's an important aspect in life generally. And just having the confidence in myself to know that basketball, whether I'm on the court or not, I'm still a valuable member of the team.
And that leads into something, it became something of a running joke, because when you did a podcast around the time of George Floyd, you have a bit of a self-deprecating sense of humor about your playing career and the stats you put up, but I just remember everyone having a laugh and kind of propping you up. So even if you weren't the star player, what maybe were some moments, memories, or skills that you developed that have carried with you as you've branched out into law school, being a musician, and trying to balance both? How would you say your time as an athlete has fed into what you do now?
I would say that I was still a leader, whether it was on the court or off the court. I was more so, I noticed that, I would lead a lot of the team cheers for people to, get on defense. And I could tell that when I would cheer my teammates on the court, I could see them getting a boost of energy. I could see them just being more enthusiastic to play. And now that I'm the president of the Black Law Student Association at my law school, and I'm also the founder and president of the First Generation Law Students Association at my law school. So I think that just that want to bring the community in, and that want to cheer people on, I think that has a lot to do with being a leader. And I think a leader is someone who is willing to be self-sacrificing in a way.
What else do you think basketball gave you? When you started, you said it gave you a chance to get out of the house, it gave you a chance to connect with people, and like you said, learn how to be a cheerleader, a leader, and find other ways to get involved that maybe don't show up on stat sheets. But what do you think this sport, what do you think it gave you as you made your way up through the high school ranks?
Well, I think honestly, staying out of trouble, really, being able to, having somewhere to go every day after school, having discipline, because when I was in high school, I was living on my own. I had my own apartment through the Salvation Army Booth Brown House. So I needed that structure. So I think structure and something to look forward to every day was definitely helpful.
I think I've heard about that part of your story before, and you might have mentioned it, because what I remember of your story in particular, I think your senior year, you were one of the recipients for the Against the Odds scholarship program.
Yeah, Beat the Odds.
Beat the Odds. So I saw a video segment that they did about you and all the other nominees, all the other recipients of that. So if you don't mind, I get whatever you're comfortable with as far as discussing it, is that's not a situation I come across often. But how did you handle that? It's a tough situation no matter who's facing it. But how did you work your way through it?
Well, really, my faith in God really helped me through the situation, just knowing that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel and just relying on God to get me through it. I just had to be resourceful and had to just continue to keep pushing and look at the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the most, it's hard to even say how you're able to get through it. You just take everything day by day, play by play, and just know that there's, like I said, a light at the end of the tunnel.
How do you think that helped you through some of those tumultuous situations? I recall a couple of details that you shared. I don't remember all the specifics, but you went through a lot of things that I wouldn't wish on anybody, and I don't mention this to try to rehash old incidents or try to relitigate all of that. So I'm not looking to draw out sob stories, so to speak, but how did your faith and how did your involvement in basketball, how did all of that just keep you going amidst all the turmoil that you were dealing with, whatever it was?
Again, I think the main thing is the community, not really having a family base to go back home to every night and like having your mom and dad and all that around. Just being able to go to basketball and kind of get parental figures like Coach Latoya. She helped me a lot. She gave me rides after practice. She helped me to apply for college, apply for scholarships. So being a part of the basketball community, it connected me to people who helped me through life and who helped me to survive, essentially.
So how did you and Latoya meet? Well, I guess you mentioned that already, through middle school. How did that connection, that bond, how did that form over the years where you looked upon her as someone you could go to when you didn't feel like you had other people to turn to, if you know what I mean?
Well, she was always someone who, she still is someone who is community oriented, and she really wants to be a resource for people in the community. She's always giving words of wisdom. She's always giving out knowledge. She's always motivating and encouraging. So I really leaned into that. And, when she would give me rides home from practice and we would talk and like different stuff like that, she would give me more advice and provide me more resources to continue forward. So by the time she moved to go to Como, I was like, I really want to be, continuing to be a player on her team, regardless if we're winning or losing. So that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to go to Como, was because Coach Latoya got a job at Como, and I wanted to kind of just continue to be under her wing. So it's really just spending time day after day. And she invited me to her house and different things like that, and I was able to have a family, essentially.
I know you speak highly of her now. The two of you are still in touch, but how instrumental do you think that was for you in your development, having someone like Latoya and that group of Como players. I remember seeing you at the Intercity All-Star game when Andrea was playing, and there was a shot of you cheering her on after she pulled off some crazy athletic play that she was known for. But how instrumental was that for you when you were dealing with situations of turbulence, dealing with all these turbulent moments that could have broken someone else, but didn't break you? How instrumental?
Yeah, I would really say it was the embodiment of ball is life. So I was every day practice, every day, every single day. So I was preoccupied. I didn't have time to really focus on, being sad or anything like that. I had to focus on, we have a game to prepare for, we have plays to watch, and we have things to do. And I believe my senior year, it was either my junior or senior year, I was captain of the basketball team, and that was not because of my athletic ability, but because of what I contributed to the team. And even while I was in high school, I was living on my own. I was playing basketball, but I was also working at a law firm for 2 years. So that, helped me to pay my bills, pay my rent. And so I was super busy. I didn't really have time for me, failing wasn't an option. And I think that being around a bunch of athletic and amazing players who were always winning and were always, just trying our best to be the best we can be, I think that translates into life.
And even if you weren't the most athletic, you still had a few moments. When I went back and went through some of the highlights or games of Como that I covered when you got some more playing time. Are there any moments that stand out? I know you got to go to a state tournament and you got to take part in a lot of different activities. And again, you were cheering on Andrea at the Intercity and all these other events. So what are some moments that you look back on fondly from your time as an athlete?
For me, it was definitely the Holy Angels game. That was my best game. When I was able to get more playing time. And I think a lot of the highlight moments for me were AAU with the Charity Warriors. That was really fun, traveling the country, and I got a lot more playing time in those games. So that was good. And also, as far as the family and community, there were times where I had to stay with my basketball coach or stay with some players on the team that they helped me out too when I didn't have anywhere to live.
It's something we discussed, but I also wanted to explore with you. I've interviewed a lot of Miss Basketball winners these last couple of months, and I've interviewed a lot of other dignitaries who went Division I, who maybe had illustrious college and pro careers. You went on a different path, but to this day, I think you're the only one I know who has that beat the odds scholarship to her name. I know that was back in your undergrad days, but how did you get nominated for that award? How did that come about? And if you don't mind, just explain the process, everything that went into it, because I remember the year that you were featured, everyone had a story of perseverance to tell, but I'm guessing there's a little more to that too.
Yeah, so actually it really goes back to Coach Latoya as well. So I really wanted to go to Spelman, but they are a prestigious school. So my grades and my finances and my family connections weren't on paper looking like enough to get into that school. So I talked to Coach Latoya about it, and she was like, "Are you doubting God?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a good point." So she was like, "Just apply for scholarships, because it's $54,000 a year at the time to go to Spelman, and they don't give scholarships really." So she was like, apply for scholarships as if you already got in. So that's when I started doing a lot of research and applying for scholarships, and I found the Beat the Odds scholarship, and I applied for the scholarship, and I went to the interview, and because I got through the first round, and I got to the interview, and I read the informational pamphlet, and it said that the CEO of the scholarship was a Spelman alumna and was on the board of trustees. So I felt like that was a sign from God that I was on the right path. And essentially, when I won that scholarship, Miriam Wright Eidelman, who is the CEO of the foundation she wrote me a letter of recommendation to get into Spelman. So it was definitely a serendipitous series of events to get in there. So essentially, to recap, I was doubting that I was going to get into Spelman, and Coach Latoya was like, go ahead and apply for scholarships as if you already got into Spelman. And so as I was awaiting, I got deferred from Spelman. And as I was awaiting my acceptance letter, I started applying for scholarships. And that's when I heard about the Beat the Odds scholarship. And essentially that's how I got into Spelman. So I think that's one of my strongest stories and testimonies of faith, because if I would not have had the faith to, like Coach Latoya said, act like I already got into Spelman and apply for that scholarship, I wouldn't have met Miriam Wright Eidelman to write me a letter of recommendation and get me into Spelman.
Latoya has used that line on me a couple of times in my broadcasting career, even though we're a little closer in age. Yeah. And then I also like the serendipitous part. Not too many of my guests have thrown that line in there, and I like words, so yeah, look at you. Showing off all your multifaceted knowledge base. I'm all for that. What was that interview process like? Because I know what Beat the Odds for someone like me, it's okay. There's like a story, there's a comeback story in here. But what was that like? Because I know for you, you had, as you established, found your footing and you were pushing forward as best you can. But I'm also wondering, were there moments where you have to maybe relive some things that were maybe more difficult when you're getting interviewed and you have to put all this information down to illustrate why you think you should be in the running for something like this?
Well, to me, it was when people are asking me what my story is, it's really just what's going on in my life. So it wasn't like I was literally living it at the time. So it wasn't so hard for me to talk about it. There was a time where I won the Constance Curry Scholarship, which is for the west side of St. Paul. There's a rec center over there, and I won a $1,000 scholarship. And I wrote an essay telling my story, and the woman comes up to me crying who read it, and she's crying, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you," and everything. And I was like, whoa, like I didn't know it was that serious. Like for me, it was just the reality of the situation. You know, I was thankful that at Salvation Army Booth Brown House that I was able to even have a place to live. So it wasn't like I was living on the street or living outside. I had a place to live at that time. So I felt blessed that I could, make it through those situations.
What do you remember when you heard that you were one of the finalists? They had like 5 finalists and then 1 winner, but they gave everybody their flowers. So you got a video, and I think all the others who won it with you also got that same coverage. But when you heard that you made that cut, I think it was a $5,000 scholarship, if I remember. But one of the many things that helped you get into Spelman, just what do you remember when you were selected, considering Latoya kind of pushing you in that direction and some of the things you're talking about? So how do you think that announcement with your name on that list affirmed your instincts, so to speak?
Yeah, well, like I said, when I won the Beat the Odds scholarship and Miriam Wright Eidelman wrote me a letter of recommendation to get into Spelman College, it was just a confirmation of my faith in God and how amazing God will appear in your life when you rely on him. And that was really what it was. Once I read that pamphlet, when I went to the interview and I read the pamphlet that Miriam Wright Eidelman was on the board of trustees, I already felt like I knew I was going to win, because it was just too coincidental, as some would say, that it was literally an answer to my prayer in that moment. So it really just strengthened my faith in God. My whole journey, even to this day, it's just a back and forth, because I'm blessed to be where I am, but I still have so much more to go, so much more to accomplish, given that Spelman College is $54,000 a year. Winning $5,000 scholarship is definitely a blessing, but it's also like, okay, now this gives me the confidence and the courage to find more scholarships and keep applying. So I've won over $100,000 in scholarships to this day, and it's definitely more than that. I just haven't kept count. Like the Dell scholarship, that was a $20,000 scholarship with a laptop. To this day, they still pay for my therapy. So to this day, I still use the laptop that I have from high school that I won from Dell Scholarship. So those scholarships changed my life. So applying for those scholarships and winning, it gave me the courage to not only keep applying, but to teach other students how to apply. So once I did get to Spelman, I was still struggling financially, and so I was in the financial aid office every week to the point where Miss Rosa McQuay, the financial aid director, she actually invited me to her house for Thanksgiving, and she also asked me to do a presentation on how to win scholarships. So I currently have a PowerPoint that I use to teach other students how to apply for scholarships, and I have kind of an outline on how to do that. And so I've helped students from Spelman College win scholarships, and I've taught at local high schools in San Diego on how to teach students how to win scholarships.
And I'm guessing you've passed along some of these tips to your little sister over there?
Right now, she's on her way into high school, so I definitely press it. But you know, she got to take it. You know, she has to listen. So I'm not trying to drown her out. But now this year that she's in starting high school, she's definitely going to hear from me. But yeah, she's definitely going to be going to college, and she's definitely going to be getting lots of scholarships.
Spoken like a true big sister. Yeah. But she's got a little bit of time.
Yeah.
It's something you said, the Dell Scholarship still pays for your therapy. That's not a story I hear often. That's not a connection that comes up a lot. And how would you say that has helped you? I'm not asking what you go to therapy for, but I know mental health has been getting a lot more focus in recent years with athletics. And even though your time as an athlete ended in high school, at least as a competitive one, how has that been helpful? Because I remember some of the details, not everything, of what you experienced, and I could certainly understand why it might require some of those sessions. But when you do that, or when you say it helps pay for that, how has that helped you?
Yeah, it's been extremely helpful. It helped me pay for therapy all throughout undergrad and to this day. So just being able to have that resource and not having to worry about, am I going to be able to pay for it, was very helpful. The Dell Scholarship also, when COVID hit, they paid for Wi-Fi for a full year. So I had a Wi-Fi hotspot for a full year in my undergrad during COVID. And like I said, I still use that Dell laptop to this day. So it's been extremely instrumental. If I didn't apply for those scholarships, I'm sure I would have found a way to get a laptop, but I didn't have to because they helped. So yeah, maybe one day I can work for Dell because I love what they're doing in the community. I think I think a lot more businesses should be doing that.
And then you mentioned getting over $100,000 in scholarships. I know law and music are two of your biggest passions, but have you considered going into public speaking or teaching, because you have all these presentations and you could be quite the multi-pronged entrepreneur here, Zarina.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I would love to go into Congress one day. I would love to go into policy. I would love to go into educational policy because I'm really passionate about that, about students in the inner city who go to public schools like Como Park who need that extra support and need someone to tell them that they can do it. And so that's what I'm really passionate about. And so I'm just allowing God to lead me on the journey and see where I end up. That was why I was considering going to be a Navy JAG officer, because I think that's a good pipeline into policy work and into the government. So I'm not sure yet how exactly it's going to play out, but I definitely do plan on continuing that. I mean, as president of the Black Law Student Association and the First Generation Law Students Association, I'm already kind of a teacher in a way, a leader. So those skills are currently being formed and strengthened.
I'm curious, Zarina, were you ever thinking about going into athletics in college, things like that? Because again, I know we've all joked about you not being the most talented, that's a little harsh, not having the accolades that someone like Andrea did or the Minnehaha kids, but you were well known and well respected from all the interactions that I've seen with others around you. So was that something you were considering? And then on a related note, what led you to pursue this dual-sided path as a rapper musician and also as an aspiring lawyer attorney?
Well, I'm sorry, what was the first one?
Okay. So were you considering, was there a point where you thought about maybe going into college basketball, something along those lines? And at the same time, You know what, we'll start with that. Was that, because I'm complicating myself, but was that something you were thinking about, or did you have a sense of where you wanted to go that maybe didn't involve basketball when you were finishing up high school?
I think when you're playing basketball, there's always that sense of like, wow, this is so fun. I would love to continue this into college. But then there's also the reality of it. Like, I'm not going to be competing with these top athletes from across the country to go play college basketball. And also, I always wanted to go to a HBCU. So going to HBCU, I wasn't really so much focused on sports, but just honestly getting to an HBCU. So I kind of knew by the time I always kind of knew that I wasn't going to be going to college for a basketball scholarship. But I was thinking it would be fun, maybe considering playing like intramural basketball at a college. But no, I never really, that was never really my goal to be a college athlete.
Fair enough. And interestingly, I interviewed Mimi Wheeler yesterday. She's at Norfolk State, and I know of several Minnesota athletes who found success at HBCUs, but you found success in another path, and I think that's also admirable. So what gave you this itch to pursue music and law? I know a lot of folks who have done one or the other, and as you're proving, I don't know where these careers will take you, but there is a way to fit both in, as you've demonstrated over these years.
Yeah, for me, poetry and rap is a God-given talent that I feel obligated to use and to have my voice be heard, whether it's on a main stage or just rapping for a small group of people who are inspired by my lyrics. So I felt like that was something that I had to continue regardless of the career I chose. But as far as becoming an attorney, that was something that I've always wanted to do as well. It's more stable as far as finances. A music career isn't lucrative unless you're signed to a major record label, and that comes with its own strings attached as well. So that wasn't something that I was interested in pursuing. I kind of want to have more autonomy and independence in my journey in life. But again, they're both my passions, and I think that they overlap in the sense of advocacy. Music and law are both forms to use your voice for advocacy, whether that voice is writing research briefs or writing a poem that you share with people on Instagram. Even when I walk down the street in San Diego, people notice me from Instagram, and when I go to Atlanta, people know that I rap. So my voice does reach a lot of people in rap, and I'm hoping that when I become an attorney that I will be able to impact a lot of people as well with that work.
I think it helps that your handle also includes the fact that you rap. You're Zarina Raps TV, so I'm like, if that didn't signal to people what you're about, then there's a problem. But I thought of something too, I suppose. Who knows, maybe even a record company reaches out to you because as being an attorney, I don't know what kind of law you're looking to get into, but you'll probably have a leg up on thousands, if not more, aspiring musicians when it comes to music licensing clearances. I'd like to think with your background, you would have a significant step up. So even if you don't land a lucrative deal, you can help navigate others and make a name for yourself that way, because there's a lot that you have to go through, whether it's licensing a song for TV, film, or getting clearances for covers, etc. So yeah, I'd like to think those two will intertwine, perhaps, if that is a path you choose.
Yeah, so intellectual property is big in San Diego. So I'm considering that. I'm really just right now focusing on finishing my third year of law school and passing the bar. And then from there, again, just relying on God to lead me on the right direction, because I'm pretty interested in really any area of law. It's all really interesting and it all helps people. So obviously depending on what side you're on, plaintiff, defense, and all that. So, yeah.
Well, I'll let you know if I ever need your services. Hopefully
Okay.
It won't be anytime soon.
Yeah.
There were a couple of other thoughts. Well, actually, one that came to mind too. You mentioned your rapping and your poetry. I remember going to a Voices Merging conference at the U of M where they highlighted that, but you did get a chance to participate in some community initiatives. I remember you were in some competition to put together a lyric or two about Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if you had more opportunities. So you haven't had the big break, quote unquote, but you've forged a few experiences that I'm guessing you still remember fondly to this day.
Yeah. Being in Atlanta and rapping, it was a great experience. I was able to do a lot of shows around Spelman and Morehouse, as far as just like on campus, like Hump Wednesday, the Martin Luther King concert, memorial concert. And Tupac, he's my favorite artist. I rapped at a local Tupac memorial concert. So I did a lot in Atlanta as far as rapping, and that was really fun. But as far as just being more stable with a career, that's why I decided to go to law school.
And I'm curious, Zarina, I forgot to ask you about this as we went in this path, but in terms of athletes or anyone else, who would you say, and this can include anybody, there's no wrong answer here, but growing up, who were your role models, whether they were in sports or maybe you mentioned Tupac being one of your favorite musicians, but who are the people that inspired you to pursue everything, whether it was basketball or music or law? Who were the role models that helped you get there?
So Tupac Shakur is one of my main inspirations for poetry, rap. He was able to not only advocate for his political views, but also talk about real stories that were going on in his community. And I find that is the essence of what rap is and what poetry is. And so that was really inspiring to me. And he also went to be a movie star and do a lot of other things in the community. And when he had interviews, he was talking about community issues that were important to him. So I found that to be an amazing way for him to use his platform. Another person that is really inspiring to me is Queen Latifah. She's a rapper, and she talks about very important things about women's rights, about what was going on in her community. And she also was able to transcend and become a movie star and a philanthropist and do so many other things with her career. And to see a Black woman doing such amazing things, especially at that time when she was coming up in the 90s, that was really inspiring to see her on TV. And I actually was introduced to her as an actress before I knew that she was a rapper. So I thought that was really cool. And yeah, so those are really my main inspirations. I think that there's a lot of people throughout life, just generally like here and there, that have inspired me. But as far as famous people, those are really my main inspirations. But people in the community all around have inspired me to just continue. Even the St. Paul mayor, Melvin Carter.
Melvin Carter.
Yeah, Melvin Carter, he actually sent me a letter when I was at the Booth Brown House thanking me for my community service. So that was something that was, imagine being a teenager at a homeless shelter and the mayor of the city sends you a letter thanking you for your service in the community. That was something that was really inspiring, because I don't know if people know that, but when I was in high school, I did do a lot of community service. I was on the St. Paul Youth Commission. I was a part of a lot of different programs to be a voice for my community. And so that's something that I still lean into today.
And you also have an affinity for the classics if you're a Tupac and Queen Latifah fan. I was like, yeah, they were big names before you were born.
Yeah.
So if anyone ever says, oh, these kids don't respect the old elders, I'm like, oh no, word travels. So I didn't know about that either. Well, I knew you were highly active even outside of basketball, and I remember interviewing you once or twice, and I could tell, like, okay, this woman knows her stuff. Like, she's looking to get something out of this, and I'd say that's an understatement. I don't know if that translates as smoothly into law, because law encompasses so many things and you still have the bar that's ahead of you in another year of law school. But if you can find a way to encapsulate it, what have you learned in your experience as an undergrad at Spelman and as a postgrad at, what was it again?
California Western School of Law.
California Western. What have you learned about law, that experience, and just everything that goes around it? Because I follow like the Legal Eagle YouTube channel, and he highlights, and I think any aspiring lawyer would tell you, language is important, how you word things is important. But what have you learned that has enlightened you, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, honestly, what I've learned throughout my journey that is pretty cliche, but all things are possible. And so all things are possible when you have faith and when you have the will. Like where there's a will, there's a way. So I think that's the main thing that I would share with people is that no matter who you are, where you come from, or what resources that you have, there's always a way. And so that's something that I've realized. And also, law school has shown me that I can tap into a much more like a higher self in a sense because it's pushed me to work harder than I've ever had to work. I work overnights at a hotel while going to school full time, while being a leader in the school community. So it's forced me to work hard, and so yeah.
You've relayed some of the goals, some of the ambitions that you have for your career once you complete your law school and pass the bar. I'm going to say you will at some point because you're not one that gives up easily, as from what I can tell. But what would be your dream job or your career goals? You threw out some ideas, but once you get through your schooling and are ready to apply everything you know about music and law, what do you hope to accomplish with that, and how will that continue your mission? You've talked about being a community leader. How do you think that will enable you to continue that path? Because from what I'm getting out of this conversation, if you make it big, whatever happens in law, music, or both, you don't want to leave the people behind that might need the assistance like you got when you were a student, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so my ultimate dream is to be able to come back to St. Paul and Minneapolis and to build foundations, organizations, pour into currently existing organizations that are empowering the youth of our city. And the education gap that exists in Minnesota between Black and white students as far as educational achievement, that's something that I really want to work towards mitigating and bridging. So I think it's really important, regardless of what I do, whether that's through money, whether that's through politics, being able to really come back and help my community and make sure that the youth here in Minnesota, particularly youth of color, particularly Black youth, are able to have a funnel into college or into whatever trade program or career that they want to go into, and being able to not necessarily make it out of the city, but make something out of themselves and out of life. And I think that it starts with the schools, and I think it starts with our resources that we give to our children or don't give to our children. Even when I was playing basketball and going from Como Park High School, which at the time had like padlocks on the toilet paper in the bathroom, and going out to schools like De La Salle or Holy Angels and walking in, and they have these huge food courts and they have these gift shops and they have all of these resources. And I couldn't help but think, if the students in my school walked in every day and saw a beautiful college campus-like school, how they would be motivated to do their schoolwork and show up and be a part of the community. So I want all students in Minnesota, particularly, and of course in the whole country, in the world, but starting in my community, to have those resources. And it starts with money and it starts with politics. And I think that there's a way for me to use my position as an attorney, as an advocate, as a lyricist, as a community activist, to bridge that gap.
I'm also wondering, Zarina, do you still have that layup down?
I don't know. I haven't tested it out in a while.
What would you say is the most unusual thing about yourself that people wouldn't know if they met you for the first time? And by that, I mean an interest, talent, hobby, just something that makes Zarina who she is.
Unusual. I have to think about that. Well, I like to talk in a British accent sometimes. So I'll talk in a British accent for a moment of this interview because it's really fun for me. I don't know why I even picked this up, but something else that I've done that you probably don't know is I wrote a song for a movie called, what was it called? the African American and Jewish Civil Rights Alliance. So I have a song. I'm gonna break off the British accent, but
I was like, did you submit this song in a British accent? Did you perform it?
No. So at one point I was like signed to like this production company in Atlanta, and that was a whole long story. I had to get an attorney and get out of that contract. But in the midst of it, I wrote a song for a documentary called the African American and Jewish Civil Rights Alliance, essentially. It's called Shared Legacies, actually, sorry. It's called Shared Legacies, African American and Jewish Civil Rights Alliance. And so sometimes I go around the country and speak at different events and rap at different events. And essentially it's to educate people on the African American and Jewish Alliance during the Civil Rights Movement. And the point of it is to try to get people to recognize that we all are a part of each other's movements and we need to continue to collaborate. But that was a cool experience for me to be in a movie premiere and hear my song playing at the end, and that I wrote completely. So that's another thing that is cool to have under my belt.
With all that in mind, Zarina, everything you've gone through, good, bad, indifferent, what would you tell a younger version of yourself?
That everything's gonna be okay.
You were ready.
Yeah.
Short and sweet, I like it.
Yeah.
When, if you don't mind, when did you get that feeling? When did you convince yourself? Was there a point in time or was it a series of events that led you to tell yourself that everything's going to be okay? Was there something that gave you that confidence, that sense of peace, or was it a series? Just what leads you to tell yourself, hey, no matter what happens, everything's going to work out?
Yeah, it's a series of events of my life. It started off getting into Spelman. That was a major testimony for me. And ever since then, everything has worked out for my favor. And I continue to have to tell myself that. So it's not just, my faith just strengthens. Each time that I am able to overcome an obstacle, my faith strengthens. So yeah, it's a constant battle. It's a constant uphill battle, though.
Well, you've won a lot of them already. If what I've seen is any indication. Is there anything else about your story up to this point, or your hopes, dreams, aspirations, anything else you'd like to add that maybe we haven't touched on?
Just pointing out, when I was at Spelman College, I was a women's studies major with the concentration in music and social justice. So I studied the ways that music could be used for social justice impact, and it really just showed me, women like Fannie Lou Hamer. She was really an inspirational person to me as well, because she was a political activist, grassroots political activist, but she used her singing ability to calm people down in the midst of turmoil. And I just thought that was just a beautiful part of her story, that despite everything that she accomplished on the political realm, she was still able to use her singing voice and her voice generally. And it just really showed me how powerful your voice can be, whether that you're talking, whether you're rapping, whether you're singing, and how those things overlap. So that's another person that I'd like to add to my list of inspiration, Fannie Lou Hamer.